Hello, and welcome to the new episode of Movie Face Off. In this episode, we're going with cult movies. We're going to go with one. We're going to pick one of the best cult movies, The Big Lebowski, directed by the Coen Brothers, released in 1998, going up against another very popular cult film, but is also considered one of the worst films ever made. Tommy Wiseau's The Room, released in 2003. Now, I know this seems like a straight up dunk for The Big Lebowski, but The Room has become so popular and so watched that it's actually could be a tough battle to figure out which one is better in which category. Speaking of which, there will be five categories to determine which one is the best. We've got cast, story, effects and music, legacy, and relevance. So, without any further delay, let's go on and get into this movie face off. Now, the first round is cast. With The Big Lebowski, you've got John Goodman playing a Vietnam War veteran who's always yelling, "Shut up, Donnie," which is also one of the main characters. And Donnie, of course, is played by Steve Buscemi. You might know him from movies such as Reservoir Dogs, the greatest independent film of all time, and Spy Kids, because believe it or not, he was in Spy Kids. Kind of a weird thing for Steve Buscemi to do, but whatever. It was a decent franchise. But of course, the main character of this is played by Jeff Bridges, also known as the Dude, an unemployed man who is in the bowling league. And it seems, and Jeff Bridges has actually played Obadiah Stone in the first Iron Man movie. That's a fun fact to know. On The Room, on the other hand, we've got some not such famous people. I mean, you've got Greg, 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 what, what's that name? Greg Sestero, who plays Mark, the main character's best friend, who is also sleeping with his best friend's wife, and or fiance, and the fiance is played by Juliette Danielle, also known as Lisa, who's married to the main character, but is constantly cheating on him and trying to get out of the marriage. And of course, the main character, Johnny, played by none other than Tommy Wiseau. Now, Tommy Wiseau's acting is just so bad, it's actually really entertaining. But aside from that, I mean, Greg's and Juliet's performances are alright. Like, you can tell they're trying, but let's face it, it's not really gonna go. They're not really that great. But so I'm gonna have to give round one cast to The Big Lebowski here. So first point goes to Big Lebowski. Now time for round two, story. Now the story is a little bit complicated here for The Big Lebowski, so let me just go through this here. Yeah, some people come and attack the dude in his house. Then the dude meets with his bowling friends. And it's really, there's multiple storylines in this movie. Like, I heard, like, there's a woman who wants the dude's sperm to make babies. The dude has a talk with his dad, I believe it is, and then he goes on like some sort of like adventure with his buddies, and then like Donnie gets killed. Spoilers. Like, there's multiple storylines in this movie, and none of them really seem to connect, and not all of them get resolved by the end either. But it keeps you entertained at least. As far as The Room goes, on the other hand, The Room is like Johnny and Lisa, their fiance is about to get married, but Lisa's constantly cheating on Johnny. They're, and then she prepares for Johnny's birthday, and that's where things get really out of control. Now, I want to give this round to Big Lebowski, but there's more of like a central story to the room, believe it or not. I mean, there's multiple stories in the Big Lebowski, but not all of them get resolved by the end, which I can get to and do a different round later on. But the room actually has a central story that actually sort of gets resolved at the end. I say sort of because it's kind of violent in how it ends, but it's a real central story, and it's more or less stays focused on it, believe it or not. So I'm going to have to give this round to the room. So first point to the room. Now let's go on to round three, effects and music. With the room, the effects are not very good. Like there's a green screen of whenever they're on top of the roof that is obviously green screen. I mean, you just have to look at it, to be honest. And the editing is probably not that great. Like scenes where Johnny's mouth does not match up to what he's saying. Like, how is that even possible? With the Big Lebowski, the effects are pretty good, and oh yeah, the music. The music is actually pretty fun in the Big Lebowski. There's like not really music in the room. It's more like background music that's pretty generic as well. So I'm gonna have to give this round again to the Big Lebowski. 2 points, Big Lebowski. Now let's go on to the next round, which is Legacy. Now the Big Lebowski is of course one of the most popular cult movies of all time, and considered by many to be one of the best movies of all time. And it has a bunch of and it's basically a story of fun of really nothing at all. And it's a Coen Brothers movie, and it's really popular, especially among college students because it's the dude who's unemployed, but he has all this great stuff. With The Room, it's actually a very popular cult movie, but for the opposite reason, it's considered one of the, if not the worst movies of all time. And you actually have to work pretty damn hard to have a movie that's that bad. Like, that's surprisingly bad. And it's actually really hard to decide who has the better legacy. I mean, one of the greatest or one of the worst? I mean, hmm, I'm going to have to give it to The Room. I'm sorry, but I mean, with The Big Lebowski as a Coen Brothers movie, there's like multiple other movies that are probably similar to it from Coen. That's also made by Coen Brothers, or other non-Coen Brothers movies that are also similar to The Big Lebowski. But The Room is its own thing. It's become legendary. It's become actually sort of a myth. I mean, it's really impressive with what is in this movie and the kind of stories is caused people to tell. I mean, it's just become bigger than life, actually. So, Zach, the room gets another point. 2-2. Who would have thought, man? But now it's time for the final round, Relevance. Now, this may seem like a weird thing to do in a movie face off, but every movie has a theme that relates to life and it has like a certain message it wants to get across. And with The Room, as fun and hilarious as it is to watch it, it doesn't really seem to be like some sort of like theme or message about life is trying to get across the audience. It's just, oh, it's entertaining how bad it is, but there's really no real life message that's trying to get to its viewers. With The Big Lebowski, it doesn't really seem like there's anything. It's just like it's just a story about an unemployed man, bowling league, gets into these things. Not all of them get resolved by the end, but he's fine with it. But actually, that's sort of like the genius of this movie. I mean, it's a story about life, and life doesn't really have to be anything. It says, and it's basically telling us that no matter what happens, no matter what you get into, it's gonna be fine as long as you like yourself, as long as you're happy with yourself. You'll be able to get through life just fine. And I think that's what the Big Lebowski is trying to get across. And that's a good message for everyone to know, and that's why it's become so popular, especially with college students, because, the dude. So, I'm going to have to give this one to Big Lebowski 3-2. The Big Lebowski beats The Room, although The Room did not go out without getting a couple of points of its own. And honestly, even though they're both on opposite ends of the spectrum, they're both really good movies. In fact, for The Room, I actually have a book called The Room: The Definitive Guide by Ryan Finnegan. It actually talks a lot about the movie itself. It actually goes through pretty much each section and looks into how exactly this worked out. There's even a chapter called How to Handle Entering the Room. There's just there's interviews, and it's just a good read. So again, it's The Room: The Definitive Guide, Ryan Finnegan. Highly recommend the book. I highly recommend that you watch both of these movies, The Big Lebowski and The Room. So yeah, Big Lebowski wins. What do you think? Like, comment, subscribe, share, and until the next movie face off or next video, I'll be waiting for you. Dr. Cinema.